The GOAT himself, to Sean Strickland, has cemented himself as one of the biggest stars in the UFC. This time last year, he was headlining an Apex Fight Night coming off of 2 losses. Now he's sold out an arena with a record gate for a Canadian sporting event despite having literally zero name value on the card other than his own. But why does everyone love Sean Strickland, myself included? Well, let's begin with Sean's rise to stardom. I think most people became truly familiar with Sean when he was featured on the press conference of UFC 294.
No man that beats off the cartoons is gonna beat me.
But he's actually approaching his 10th anniversary of being in the UFC, with his first fight being on March 15th, 2014. Sean became a fairly successful welterweight contender, having a record of 20-3 by 2018, with one of the losses being to an up-and-coming Kamaru Usman, but he was far from a star. He'd never even been on the main card of a pay-per-view. But suddenly, it seems Sean's career was over before it truly began. In December of 2018, he got into a motorcycle accident that left him unconscious for hours and eventually hospitalized. When Sean announced the accident, he said he'd be back in a couple of months, but this was not the case. It started to seem like Sean would never be able to fight again, but he did eventually make a recovery, returning to the UFC 2 years later. Sean Strickland would move up to middleweight and become the man we know and love today, creating this iconic clip upon his return.
Come on, Jack! Come on, Jack! Big Strickland wants to fight.
He'd move up through the middleweight rankings, eventually facing Alex Pereira in what seemed like a title elimination bout, but unfortunately for Sean, we all know what happened next. He'd then lose to Jared Cannonier in an extremely close fight later that year. But little did anyone know, 2023 was going to be the year of Sean Strickland. He headlined back-to-back fight nights by taking the first card of the year on short notice up a weight class and won the bout. In his next fight, he scored a TKO over a hyped prospect in Abus Magomedov. Then finally, Sean Strickland got his chance. Number 1 contender, Dricus du Plessis, had just beat the perennial, really second champion in Robert Whittaker, and it seemed like he was next for Israel Adesanya. But as we all know, he was injured, and nobody was left for Israel Adesanya. After that, the rest is history. Why do people love Sean Strickland? I think there are 4 key reasons for why Sean Strickland is so beloved. First is his humor. He went from some guy who had to headline trash Apex cards to garnering himself a cult fan base with his roasting of Israel Adesanya at UFC 274 and absolutely stealing the show. It only took until he himself was headlining at UFC 293 to become a true star, in which once again he stole the show and crushed Israel Adesanya mentally. Naturally, people like funny fighters, they like trash talk, and Sean is great at exactly that.
Oh man, I made the champion mad with his fucking frosted tips and his gay little watch. Oh no!
And it doesn't matter where Sean Strickland is, he's always going to be funny, whether that's his tweets, whether that's his Instagram rants, or whether that's, at Media Day itself. Compare that to Sean O'Malley, who can't do anything but stutter and barely speak when he has a microphone in his face. Secondly, he has aura. Some people naturally have an aura to them that simply make you want to pay attention to them. Sean Strickland has aura. You could see that when a fan rushed him on stage at UFC 297's press conference to hype him up.
Goddamn, let's go! Let's go, dog! Let's fucking go!
That doesn't happen to very many fighters. Not to mention, look at how both UFC 293 and 297, he was clearly the fan favorite when he really shouldn't have been. At UFC 293, he's fighting long-reigning champion Israel Adesanya, who is absolutely a fan favorite and absolutely has a large aura of his own, while completely trashing Australia, aka the countries he's fighting in. So with all of that combined, you'd think the crowd would be all for Adesanya. Nope. The crowd has by far the loudest cheers for Sean Strickland. The exact same thing happened at UFC 297's press conference here in Canada. The All-American Sean Strickland, who clowns on Canada, getting the loudest cheers of anyone, with his opponent's Dricus du Plessis even being forced to turn heel as he's booed the loudest of anyone on the card. Sean Strickland is the people's champion. And third, Sean Strickland does not care. He is going to speak his mind, no matter how you feel about it or anyone else feels about it. This is definitely the biggest reason for Sean Strickland's stardom, at least in my opinion, and has helped blow him up and make people outside of the MMA community pay attention to him during UFC 297's media week. Since there's a difference between being a star in the UFC and out of the UFC, and it seems like Sean Strickland has broken past the UFC, with clips of him being asked controversial questions and giving controversial responses, garnering tens of millions of views. When you compare that to a lot of sports stars, they just don't speak out at all. You don't ever see clips of NBA or NFL stars saying anything like Sean Strickland says, so guess what? You don't ever see clips of these stars on the mic going viral in the same way that this Sean Strickland clip has. during UFC 297. Before UFC 297, clips of Sean Strickland consistently went viral in the MMA community, but 297 changed that. UFC champ says X gets a lot more eyes than UFC fighter says X. So now that he's got that belt around his waist, he's blown up well past the MMA community and getting into the eyes of the mainstream, garnering a ton of adoration, hate, but nonetheless attention. All because he does not care. Now, if he had only these three things, I think a lot more people would just see him as obnoxious, but the fact that he's a hard shell makes Sean all the more likable when that shell breaks. He had a traumatic childhood with an incredibly abusive father, so to a lot of people he's able to be an inspiration, a light in the darkness. Going from white trash who could barely even start high school to UFC middleweight champion of the world. Seeing Sean's shell break once he realized he became champion was truly special. It showed the soft side of this hard man, showing he's still a real person, and again can be a light in the darkness to a lot of people. I think these are the main reasons and I think a lot of other people think Sean Strickland is so great, but comment down below any reasons I missed, or maybe why you in fact hate Sean, since of course he's controversial too. Now, will Sean Strickland be the next big thing? Right now, Sean Strickland is arguably one of the biggest stars in the UFC. He absolutely dwarfs the supposed star Sean O'Malley. There's a reason the UFC has felt the need to stack UFC 299 and leave UFC 297 barren. Sean Strickland gets way more clicks than O'Malley and likely sells far better than him too. And again, of course, I'm just using Sean O'Malley as the example because I don't like Sean O'Malley, but we can compare it to really any star. No one is getting the kind of clicks that Sean Strickland gets. Now, the thing is, will Sean be able to hold on to this flame he currently has? The turnaround between UFC 293 and 297 was quite quick, so he's likely at the most hype he'll ever have right now. At least it's the most he will ever have if he loses the belt to Dricus du Plessis. But I don't want this video to age badly, so let's not talk about what's going to happen at UFC 297 too much. Regardless of the result, I think Sean could become a Nate Diaz style figure, people not caring if he wins or loses, just wanting to see him trash reporters, trash other fighters, and have some funny moments in the octagon. People don't even mind his generally boring fight style. His fight with Israel Adesanya has still garnered millions of views on YouTube in just a few weeks, and that fight, upon rewatch especially, you'll notice is not actually that entertaining, outside of course, the big moment at the end of the first round, and Sean Strickland screaming in Israel Adesanya's face at the end of the 5th round. But without further ado, comment down below what you think of Sean, and if you're seeing this video before UFC 297, who do you have in the main event? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.